there's a big problem in 57 AD. Right? The problem is that we thought we were making good progress because Jesus came and we thought, oh man, God is going to do what he always said he was going to do, and we're so excited we can't wait for it to happen. But then he went away and he hasn't come back, and we're not sure he's going to for an extended period of time. In fact, we're even beginning to wonder about that. And he also said he was going to put the whole world back together through the Jewish people, but that seems to run off the rails too because they've totally rejected him. And remember, it's only 6 weeks from Paul writing this letter that he actually makes it back to Jerusalem in Acts 21, and they try to kill him and beat him to death. Right? He has to flee for his life, and only the Romans take care of him. So all those concerns about Israel rejecting him, Israel turning away from him, him leaving, just kind of leave us in this big question of, my goodness, is God going to fix the world like he said he was going to do? That goes to his inherent righteousness, to his inherent moral uprightness, and in the way he keeps his commitments to his promises according to his covenants. So Paul's big idea then, of course, is that God is indeed fully, exactly righteous and will keep his promise and will put the world back together the way it's supposed to be. Now, admittedly, it certainly is not like that as you survey history. As you look out at life, you see that even though God revealed himself to people clearly through what he has made so that the divine attributes and the power of God are undeniable, people have totally suppressed it and pushed it down. And so therefore, they're without excuse. And the wrath of God is poured out on them for their behavior and the way they've turned around. And it's not just Gentiles, it's everybody. It's Jews too. And just in order to prove it, let me really talk to you about people who have the law and who have that possession and have that knowledge and have an advantage but are not really saved. And even though they have all that stuff, a Gentile whose life has been changed by faith will in fact put the Jewish person who possesses law and knows what's right, put them to shame even because they don't do what is right. So this might make you wonder whether or not God has been unfaithful, right? Because the Jews have turned away from him. And I'll talk more about that later, but let me just say right here that just because people have been unfaithful doesn't mean that God is going to be. So enough of that for right now. Let me get back to my big idea that let me just nail this whole argument down. Let me nail it shut. That, in fact, the scriptures from the Old Testament tell us clearly that all people are totally depraved and without excuse and turn away from God. But there's a good solution to that, because the solution is that even though the law has told us the kind of life we should live, God has done even more than law. He's given his word to us in the flesh, who came and took the punishment, took the propitiation, suffered the wrath for our sin, so that God is totally just because he has punished sin, and he has punished himself in that sin and taken the payment, or paid the price himself in Jesus. Now, none of that really does you any good, even though it's the foundation for everything. None of it does you really any good unless you put your personal faith in those promises of God, which is exactly what Abraham has done for us. In fact, Abraham is the perfect example because he's both a Jew and a Gentile, right? And he put his faith in God and the promises of God kind of while he was a Gentile, and then also after while he was Jewish. So he's kind of like the father of everybody. Now, if you have done this, it will absolutely, completely, unbelievably change your life in numerous ways. I'm about ready to tell you what those are, but that's where we stop today. Okay? So there you are. Again, probably a little bit too wordy. You don't need to be that wordy in the end, but I hope as I talk you could just kind of think your way through the passages we were going through. All right? Now, I want to get to these really important passages of chapter 5 today, but there's something I need to tell you about, and that is this, that several weeks ago I was talking with Sean about something, I don't remember what, but Sean gave me this compliment. He said, I've noticed that you have a pretty strong sock game, okay? So we began, comparing socks every day, and indeed he does well. He has nice, you want to show him your socks you have on today? If you don't know this, Sean is known for having a pretty strong sock game. See? It's pretty fancy. Now, up to this point, it's just been a friendly kind of, I'll check yours out, you check mine out competition. But what he doesn't know is that I've decided to crush him and end it all today. And so I just want you to know that you cannot it's impossible to have a stronger sock game than this, right? So I just, just wait for it. Yep, there we are. You can't beat the Captain America shotgun, okay? So try if you will, but good luck with that one. As beautiful as yours are, I just wanted to point that out, okay? Now, hopefully I did that fast enough before anyone got their phones out, did I?
Nope, I got it.
Did you? Okay, all right. We'll expect to see it somewhere, I'm sure. All right, you ready for Romans chapter 5? Romans chapter 5 is really a beautiful kind of transition. And I can't help myself but show you these things, because I actually just noticed this part today. Now, I've always known that 5 was a big transition, and 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all going to hang together in a big unit. But one of the very last questions I asked you, number 8, let's just go to 8 to begin with. How does this chapter end, and how is that similar to the endings of chapters 6 and 7 and 8? You could have gotten the answer to that in a variety of ways. Number one, you could have remembered what I talked about last time, right? Do you remember that? And if you didn't remember that, you could have looked it up. And if you looked it up, what did you find? For question number 8, come on, give me an answer here. What did you find out? Ben?
It all has to do with being through or in our Lord Jesus Christ.
Exactly, yeah. There's the end of chapter 5, and all of this stuff is going to happen through Jesus Christ our Lord, right? And 5 ends this way, and 6 ends this way, and 7 ends this way, and 8 ends this way. And it's really, really, really beautiful. But the thing that I noticed today was this. Notice the phrase, notice the pretty phrase. Watch the animation happening in front of your eyes. Chapter 5 even begins that way. Okay? And so again, it's like 5, 6, 7, and 8 really are this package. They're going to talk to us about what the atonement has accomplished in our lives. And they're going to talk about different facets of it. And today, of course, one of the biggest ideas is justification or peace with God. They both show up here. Right? So let me explain to you, kind of give you that the riddle type answer, a metaphor we used last time, but I think it's worthy again, to show you the big idea of what we're going to look at. And this picture is going to explain an awful lot of what Paul is going to do here in this chapter. And I'll just start out like this. The big idea of 5 is peace with God, and that's such a profound, deep concept. We're going to talk about it a lot. But someone who comes along and says, therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God, they might say, well, really? How do you do that? And this is kind of the answer to it. And you will recognize some of the things I'm going to say here in a second. What I want to do, though, is to put Adam on this chart. And I'm going to drop Adam down right here. Now, when I say Adam, I'm talking about Adam in Genesis 1 and 2. Okay? When Adam is in the garden, and this is just kind of what theologians have used to describe what he is like, we typically use the term creaturely holiness. Now, don't press this too hard or don't push back against it too hard, because it's a theological construct. It's something that we come up with because the Scripture doesn't say it explicitly, but we want to know. We want to try to find out and try to think about how to describe this. And so what we say is that he had creaturely holiness. And what that means is, as a created being, God didn't make him sinful, but neither did he make him positively righteous, in that he didn't have a track record of obedience, right? He starts right there, and that's where he starts. So we know, of course, that what Adam does is he chooses sinfulness, right? And so he becomes negative on the holiness scale. But what Christ does is undoes what Adam does and brings us back here, right? But here's the cool part, and this is kind of the foundation for what Paul is going to do for the next several chapters. What Paul is so amazed at, what he's so excited about, and what he wants to emphasize over and over and over and over and over, at least 5 times, is that Jesus doesn't just stop there, but Jesus actually goes over here. Right? So Adam brings us over, Jesus brings us back, but then Jesus brings us back even further over here. And can you just kind of off the top of your head, notice the slight sarcasm here, imagine what kind of phrase we could use to describe what that is in going from holiness to righteousness, from creaturely holiness to righteousness. Yeah, we could call that much more, right? So this is kind of the big idea behind a lot of what's going on here. Is eventually going to get to this and talk about it a lot, and you notice that phrase there. So the big idea is we have peace with God, which is a profoundly great thing. How does this happen? Well, because Jesus didn't just undo what Adam did, he went beyond it and brought to us the positive righteousness of a perfect being who obeyed the Father and was faithful in every way and died the perfect death, and gives us that kind of righteousness so that we can have this amazingly deep, profound peace with God. Okay? So we'll see that, but that's kind of your opening salvo, the big picture. All right, you good so far? You with me? All right, then let me go back to the text there, and let's talk about this new section where we are. Explanation of how God is putting the world back to the way it's supposed to be. Now, I changed that just a little bit from your notes. Didn't I? In your notes, did I say how God is recreating the world? Is that what your notes say? Okay. And I kind of like putting it slightly less formally. I really like kind of saying putting the world back to the way it's supposed to be. And you will see why I say that later, but I'll just make the note of it here. So, as God's putting the world back to the way it's supposed to be in chapters 5 through 8, the first thing we're going to talk about is the believer having peace with God in chapter 5. So, in 5:1, we see the statement, therefore having been justified by faith. Now, that's what the King James, New American Standard, NIV, ESV, and almost every other translation in the world says, except for the Net Bible. And what does the Net Bible say? Therefore, having been declared righteous by faith, right? Well, all they've done for us over here in the Net Bible is actually just define the term justify, okay? To justify means to declare righteous, as in a court of law. To be justified, a verb, to be or become judicially vindicated as having complied with the requirements of the law. Now, let that definition soak in and notice the context in which we find ourselves, right? It's like before a court of law, you have been vindicated. You have been declared righteous according to whether or not you broke the law or kept the law. And that's again, why it says you have been declared righteous, but I want you to have that definition in your head. As in, here's the illustration, was O.J. justified? Now, I realized that this all, Dahlia, you had a birthday here, didn't you? Didn't you have a birthday? So you're now 21? So you were born in 1995? Okay. So this whole stuff happened with OJ the year you guys were born. So I'm not going to hold you too accountable for having known the story, but it was such an infamous story at the time. Do you know what I'm talking about here? So somebody describe it to me. What's the story behind this? What? He murdered someone. Yes, that's true. He probably murdered someone. Now, technically, we don't know, right? Anybody else? Ben, were you shaking your head, or Cassie?
Yeah, I do know it.
Okay.
It was pretty much a huge mistrial. He had an incredible attorney who managed to convince the jury that he didn't do it, or at least to vote that he didn't do it. And I know only a few phrases, like my stepdad's like, Ben, they pulled out a glove and somehow proved that it didn't fit on his hand, and that proved he didn't do it, but not really. So I only know vague stuff. But yeah, he almost certainly murdered her, but got away.
Yes, absolutely, right? This is the picture of it, and this is the infamous glove scene, okay? And what made this such a big deal in 1994 and 95 was that O.J. Simpson was a huge NFL star. I think he was a Heisman Trophy winner, I'm not sure. Was a big star in high school, set all sorts of records in the NFL, and he was kind of the darling of the media. So he was always on advertisements for Hertz Rent-A-Car, running through airports, and he was just, made millions of stuff in his endorsements. He was a big celebrity that went far beyond sports, right? And so the glove thing was that he murdered, allegedly, his wife and her friend, I don't know if her boyfriend or not, but stabbed them brutally with a knife, and they found them dead in their blood in her driveway. He can't account for where he was, but he goes home and takes out money from the bank and starts heading for Mexico. Right? Now, not exactly what you do if you're an innocent person, but as the little statement here says, I copied this off the internet today, despite huge amounts of evidence against Simpson, including bloodstains in his car, a glove holding DNA from the guy who was murdered, the wife who was murdered, and himself, a sock ingrained with the traces of his victim's blood on his bedroom carpet, and tapes of a terrified Nicole, that's his wife, begging police for help as Simpson hit her, he was acquitted of the murders. Now, the glove thing was, there was these bloody gloves, and I would suspect that when leather gloves get wet, that they shrink a little bit. So anyway, they found these gloves and tried to have him put them on, and he struggled with it. You could see him struggling, like, oh, these don't fit. And so the defense attorney said, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And that was the little poem he came up with. And ultimately, that's what rang in the jurors' ears, and this is sort of that story. So there were mountains and mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence, but there was also huge racial tensions going on at the time. And so because he was this beloved figure, because of the racial tensions, because maybe there was a hint of a shadow of a doubt somewhere, he got off completely free. Right? He was indeed acquitted. Now, I use that because I asked the question here, was O.J. justified? And what you want to say immediately is, oh no, he wasn't justified, he was totally guilty. But having said that, we've completely mixed up the terms. You understand what I'm talking about? Was he justified? And what does justification mean? To what? To be declared righteous in a court of law. Was he declared righteous in a court of law? Absolutely he was. So he didn't have to pay for the crimes. He didn't, even if he did commit them, let's just say for sake of argument he didn't have to pay for the crimes he committed because in a court of law the judge said, you are declared righteous according to the law. Now, if that upsets you or if it bothers you, it probably doesn't because you weren't there, but for a lot of people who lived through it, you look at that and think, oh my goodness, what a travesty of justice. This is a beautiful illustration because this is exactly the way it is with you and me. Right? Were you guilty? Absolutely you're guilty. But it doesn't matter because you're still justified. You've been declared righteous in a court of law, and God says, I'm going to count you righteous and treat you as righteous no matter what you really are, and this is the way everybody else is going to treat you as well. Okay? So, the point here of justification, don't forget this, and that's why I say to become judicially vindicated as having complied with the requirements of the law. That's what it means. And so justified, all of us have been declared righteous by God, even though we are not really. Right? And remember how this whole thing happens. It happens, hint is in the next verse and the rest of the chapter, right here, through our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay? So, anything you want to say about that? Any discussion about it, or are you good with this part? That's kind of the foundation to start out with. Notice again also, I just flip over here to the next page. Look at all this stuff again, right? The explanation of God's grace. And look at all the references to the death of Jesus. Christ died for the ungodly. He died, the blood of Christ, all that stuff, the death of his son. It just keeps driving us back to this whole thing. Why are you declared righteous? Because of what Jesus has done. Because of the punishment he took for you and the righteousness of his which he gave to us. Again, theologians often talk about the alien righteousness, which doesn't sound like a very friendly, warm term. I'm not sure I like that term, except that it's really, really good. Because alien righteousness implies that it's not yours. And it's not. It's his, which he gives to us. Okay? And all the way through here, you see that kind of thing. All right. Now then, we still haven't exhausted chapter 5, verse 1 yet. I guess I better get going or we're never going to get through this. We haven't exhausted verse 1 yet because the next question is, what is peace? We've been declared righteous by faith through our Lord Jesus Christ, and because of that, we have peace with God. So, what is peace? Did I ask you to define that? It's a theologically rich concept. Can you give a thoughtful try at the definition of the word? If this is the most significant result of justification, what does it imply about how we should think about the whole gospel message? Man, there's a lot. Well, at least I said nota bene. This is a loaded question and meant to reinforce certain emphases we've seen before. Before I ask you to answer that, let me just give you a couple samples here, okay? Now, I try to choose two pictures which are very clearly contrasting And it would have been better if I'd actually shown you videos, because then we could have put motion and sound with it, right? I doubt if this left one were a video, if anything would change. You know, you could video for 60 minutes probably look the same. But obviously this one over here would be crazy and hectic and noisy and loud and smelly even, you know, if we were actually there. So which one of those is peace? Very easy discussion, right? How many people vote for the one on the left? How many people vote for the one on the right? Left people? Okay. All right, good. Yeah. So let me talk to you then about Augustine talking about shalom. Now, you all know Augustine, the church father from the 4th century, right? Really, really important kind of systematic theologian early on. And he talks about shalom, and he talks about the ultimate kingdom and living life in shalom. And he says this, and you need to know this just for your own understanding of church history. There we shall rest and see and love and praise. This is what shall be in the end without end. For what other end do we propose to ourselves than to attain to the kingdom of which there is no end? Augustine in the City of God. Rest and see and love and praise. Not bad. Not bad at all. Really, really good. Well, let me come along and show you an updating of Augustine. Anybody ever seen this book, Divine Conspiracy? This is my copy, and you can see it's kind of dog-eared. As I tend to say, it's the best book I've ever read 6 times. Say, are you nuts? Well, maybe. But this is one of the books which, without exaggeration, had a lot to do with changing my life. I just love this guy. He's with the Lord now. It's one of those books. There are 400 pages, and actually I think the quote I'm going to show you is from about page 400. But I remember the very first time I read this, I got to page 390, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is about to end. This is bad. Because this is so good, I don't want it to end. And I read the last 10 pages really, really slowly just to soak them all in because it was so good, okay? And here's one of the ways he finishes with this book. And yet, for all their beauty, he's talking about Augustine. Right? He's talking about that quote from Augustine. And yet, for all their beauty and goodness, these words do not seem to me to capture the blessed condition of the restoration of all things, of the kingdom come in its utter fullness. Repose, yes, but not as quiescence, passivity, or eternal fixity. I mean, just imagine what you think of heaven, how you imagine heaven to be. And Willard is saying, well, Augustine has part of it, but he's not all of it here. It is instead peace as a wholeness, as fullness of function, as the restful but unending creativity involved in a cosmos-wide cooperative pursuit of a created order. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand that the basic meaning of cosmos means to be put together in an ordered way, which is the basis of cosmetics, right? You're trying to take chaos and make order out of it. Okay? And sometimes cosmos, the world, is used in a negative way. Don't love the world or the things in the world. But cosmos can be used as a very positive thing too. The order which God is looking for, the way things work together in teamwork, right? The opposite of bad babble, the goodness of the whole world working together. In a cosmos-wide, cooperative pursuit of a created order that continuously approaches but never reaches the limitless goodness and greatness of the triune personality of God, its source. Now, I don't know if that touches you or not, but that sentence is so pregnant. You could think about that sentence for 10 years, right, and probably not totally exhaust it. Because what it's saying is what we're going to be doing for eternity is working and creating and inventing and writing and imagining and playing and having a blast. And how long we'll be able to do that? Until the order gets even better and better and the whole system is even better and better and better. And how far can we go? Until we exhaust the limits of God. Whoa. How long is that going to take? I mean, that's the beautiful part about just getting better and better and understanding more and more of God and really fleshing out what Eden was intended to be. Far more than just sitting in a garden. So you can understand then why I love this and why I'm thinking about shalom here in a very different sort of a way. So I kind of played a nasty trick on you before. Which one of those is shalom? I picked these pictures pretty carefully. Look at them, think about them deeply. Give me a couple of reasons for your answers. Which one is really shalom? Parker? Both? Maybe. But this isn't one of those D, none of the above things. I really do have one of these which I think is a better representation.
Oh, better.
Yeah.
The one on the right.
Well, you say the one on the right just because you think I want you to say the one on the left, but you think that's wrong, so you're thinking you're going to outsmart me and do the one on the right.
No, I'm thinking one on the right because...
Because, now this is the key word, because...
Yeah, fullness of function when you have... No, those people who are racing and...
There's always women in his life that help him out.
They're doing what they love to the best of their abilities at the fullest level, because that's professional NASCAR, and so imagine that even more so.
Okay.
Yes?
Oh, I don't know. You tell me. They're not really NASCARs.
All right. Well, I don't know. I'm not a hillbilly.
Okay, he's given us one argument, but there's a lot going on up there, and I want you to think through it, so help him out here. What do you think?
I think also the cars are constantly moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a straight track where you have a start and a finish. It just keeps going and going and going as they progress forward.
Okay, so there's constant movement there. What were those race cars designed to do? Race. Are they doing it? Oh, yeah. I mean, it's too bad we just can't make a video come alive right there, right? Just to hear the noises and the sounds and those things doing exactly what they're doing. And if you happen to be a fan of that kind of stuff and you were there, how would you feel? Oh, my, that would be exciting, right? This would be it. So much preparation goes into that day. Talk to me about the one on the left. Talk to me about the boat designer. If the boat designer came here, what would he think of the picture? Stephen? Boat's not being used for its purpose. Why not? Yeah, there's how many people are in the picture on the left? Zero. Yeah, notice there could be some guy hiding under that one on the deck, right? But it's upside down. Boats were not designed to, sit upside down on the deck. And notice what you find there in the boat, even in the water. There are seats in it. Seats are for people. There are oars there. What are the oars for? People, right? Do you see that over here you have quietness, you have passivity, but you have nothing functioning the way it's supposed to function? This is functioning the way it's supposed to function in a powerful, big, amazing way. So let me go back to this and talk about what is a good antonym of shalom. Empty, passive, idle, what's that, Ryan? Without purpose. Broken. Who said broken? Andrea? Okay. You said disconnected? Yeah. So if in fact we have things like idle or, gosh, now you guys said them, I can't remember them. Idle, broken, without purpose, disconnected. What is the opposite of that then? What is shalom again? But in your own words, shout it out to me. Fulfilled, complete, You almost have to make a verb out of it. It has to be functioning, has to be living, has to be active, has to be creative, has to be fulfilling the purpose for which it was designed. Okay? Now, I want you to keep that with you, because when we're talking here in Romans chapter 5, when he says, therefore, we have peace with God, it's that rich shalom background that he's bringing with it. So no one who reads this chapter with understanding is going to say, oh, isn't that a sweet concept? You're going to start to say, you have peace with God? So explain to me, just in that little phrase, peace with God, what would that then imply? "60 seconds in a group. What does it imply? Peace with God. 60 seconds. And I'm going to ask you, tell me why you got the right answer. Okay, 60 seconds are up. Okay, who wants to answer it first? Your friends are pointing at you.
We said like a dynamic relationship.
Yeah, a dynamic relationship. I like that. This is a good start. Dynamic relationship, which means...
We kind of said like vibrant, active, moving.
Yeah, good. I like those words. Ryan?
Having peace with God means no longer working against God's plan, but working with Him.
Uh-huh.
Participation with Him.
Yep, that's good. That's good. I like that too. Working with Him. Seth?
It kind of implies that things will go back to the way they were in Eden, like they're being with God and like it being in fellowship with Him.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So give me some verbs that come from then. Yes, I like that. Walking with God. Exploring with God. Hanging out with God. Eating dinner with God. Eating dinner with your head on God's chest. Right? I mean, what is the Last Supper all about? What is the story of John and Jesus in intimate connection with together? I mean, I don't ever have dinner putting my head on someone's chest unless, it was with my brother and we were sitting around watching TV, eating dinner, and he was laying down and I was laying down next to him and I put my head up on his chest. How many people do you do that with? That's really close functioning, right? But you get this sense here. This is what John does with Jesus. And when it talks about peace with God, it's talking about not just, okay, no more war here, but this whole relationship functioning as the way it was supposed to. Think about, I like the way Seth said it, think about walking with God in the cool of the day. Thinking about hanging out with God. Thinking about being with God. Thinking about having this kind of fullness of function with sin being an alien invader in the whole relationship and restoring the way things are supposed to be. And then think about this. Let's think about, what if Jesus came back tomorrow? What would we do? After the wedding supper of the Lamb was all over and we all celebrated and have a big dinner, what would we do next? Well, it's the first day of the rest of your life for sure. And we start into this. I don't know, it kind of blows your mind. This is what Isaiah means when he says, eye has not seen, nor has ear heard, nor has even entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for those who love him. Right? Daniel?
Because of the toil of the curse, that we just want to break from all the toil so that the lake seems like peace to us,
Mm-hmm.
when really like having the work without the toil is even better than just not having toil at all.
Yes. Yeah, good point. Because if Jesus did come back tomorrow and we had the wedding supper of the Lamb and then he took us here, just imagine, let's just start class. We go to that lake. What would we do? Would you sit there and just enjoy the peace and quiet? What if someone found an engine for a boat? I mean, it wouldn't take very long before we started, a big party broke out, would it? And we started splashing in the water, right? And someone found a boat or a sailboat, and we started doing some water sports and just doing a whole bunch. We wouldn't just sit there for very long. We would get up and be active. We'd go exploring. Somebody would go out on a hike and find out what's in those hills. I mean, you start being really active right away, as you should be. as you're built to be. Yeah, so play work. Let's call it that. Yeah. Okay, so let me put it this way and say we're talking here in Romans 3 and 4 and 5 about this idea of peace. But when he says peace, he's reaching back to there, and he's also looking forward to here. Okay? So this peace with God, think of it as restoring, putting the world back the way it's supposed to be and the way it's going to be again. And then I ask you the question here, which was, what does this imply? If this is the most significant result of justification so far, peace with God, what does it imply about how we should think of the whole gospel message? Now, were you able to think with some of this background for that question or not? What does this imply? What does this imply about the whole gospel message? When I say the good news, how should we think about it? The red and the blue for sure. Uh-huh.
It's not really just like Christ frees us from sin, but he frees us from sin so that we can
Yeah, yeah. He does not just freedom from sin, although that's important, not just so we can go to heaven, but so that we can really get back to having a blast here on the earth with God. Right. The gospel message is the good news of putting it all back together, and you probably ought to be thinking about that whole thing as you think about what is the gospel. Okay, but gosh, we're almost done with question number 1. That's really good. That's really good. Oh, so here I was going to say, when you think about this chart, brokenness, Andrew, is actually the word I chose. Right? It is broken. And over here, I don't know if idleness is a great word or not, right? But I know that over here, shalom, where we are perfectly functioning and living and doing, right? In a very verbal sort of a way. So, 5:2 talks about the glory of God. Let's get back to it, and we might just go a little bit faster here. Through whom we have also obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand. Notice the difference between the green words up here. We have been declared a past action with present results, so that now, present tense, we find ourselves in a state of grace where we now presently stand. Because of what God has done in the past, because we have been justified, we now currently stand in grace. And then an unfortunate page break in our notes. 5:2c, and we rejoice in hope of God's glory. So please explain the concept from verse 2 in your own words, if you would. What does he mean when he says we rejoice in the hope of God's glory? I should just give you a little hint. A little hint is this. Whenever you see the word hope, hope is, as you know, not just, oh, gee, I hope it does, or a possibility, but hope is always faith applied to the future. It's a fairly simple definition, but it absolutely works. It's always strong faith applied to the future. Hope is always thinking about what's going to happen. So when he says we rejoice in the hope of God's glory, what does he mean? We're thankful that we have been justified in the past. We're thankful that we now stand in grace, but here's something else we're really hoping for, Sean. Yeah, exactly, the shalom that we're talking about. We're looking forward to the day when we live the kind of lives which bring glory to God and which fill out that glorious life which we should have done in the first place. So I would put it something like this. That's the glory we're looking forward to, and we're getting closer and closer to the glory. But let me just say this. In the same way that falling short of the glory of God in 3:23 doesn't just mean you failed because you're not as good as God, slightly impossible and therefore hopeless, but you failed in that you haven't lived the amazingly beautiful and exciting life that Adam and Eve did for several exhilarating seconds. Now, I don't know how long it was before they fell. Theologians always wonder, how long did they live in the garden like this? You know, was it a minute? Was it an hour? Was it a day? Was it a week? Was it a month? Was it a year? No one knows. It's impossible to find out. Although, man, wouldn't it have been fun to go back and see what they did, a life in the day of the two of them? So, they were living to the glory of God, or at least should have been. And that's, of course, what I think he's saying we're looking forward to living out that glory of God. All right? So let's keep going here so we actually can make some headway. Did you make any observations about the time element in 5:1-5? And let me just show you what I'm talking about here so we can get through. Did you notice the outline for the future, for the present? In fact, if you wanted to go back, you can even look at this, as I said before. Having been declared righteous by faith is a past action with present results. So we were justified in the past. In the future, we're looking forward to the hope of God's glory, but in the present, we experience suffering. So 5:1-2, this positional standing before God because of past justification. 5:2c, which is right up there, right? We delightful and confident anticipation of our future experience when our experience matches our position in Christ. And then 5:3, we rejoice in our present sufferings that move us toward the consummation. Now, what he's talking about is this. When he says in 2c, we rejoice in the hope of the God's glory, we're looking forward to the future. But notice the next verse says, not only this. Now, when he says this, he's talking about 5:2c. Not only that, but we also rejoice in sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance. So obviously in 5:3, 4, and 5, he's talking about life right now, because there ain't going to be no suffering when we get to 5:2c. But we certainly do have suffering now. So how can you rejoice in your current sufferings? Well, because suffering produces endurance. Because every time I suffer, I say, oh my goodness, do I really want to do this? Do I really trust that God is going to keep his promises? Do I keep persevering even in the pain? And every time you ask that question and answer yes, like Abraham did, it develops perseverance. Perseverance in your faith, seeing a tough situation occur every day facing it and saying, okay, we haven't had a baby yet, but I think God's going to give us one. Or, this chronic disease I live with every day is tough, but I believe God's going to deliver me from it someday, and so I'm going to act as though he is in the reality that he will. And I keep moving forward in perseverance. Right? It produces endurance and character hope. It gives me even more hope in the future. And hope does not disappoint because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts through the Holy Spirit who was given to us. And the Holy Spirit gives us strength to say yes and to hope in that future. So Paul is saying here, I guess I should have gone back to this previous one. We're not only are rejoicing in the glory which is to come, but right now, even in these sufferings, they're producing change in our life that are moving us in the direction of the ultimate glory of God up here. Okay? And I think that's the focus of 5:1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You with me? Make sense? Okay. All right. Then, in order to keep moving, before I get to question number 4, let me go to this. You'll notice that in the outline I have here the explanation of why this works, God's grace. The good part is we have peace with God. The explanation is of God's grace. And remember what I told you the acronym for grace was? God's riches at Christ's expense. You just can't forget that because it's such a biblical way to think about it. And that's exactly what he does here. God's grace, and then look how many times he talks about the death of Jesus. Verse 6, Christ died. Verse 7, to die. Verse 8, Christ died for us. Verse 9, by his blood. What's his blood? Just another reference to his death. We'll be saved through him, reconciled to God through the death of his Son. So just boom, 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 boom. Don't ever forget how this happens. Justification by faith through our Lord Jesus Christ. Chapter 5, verse 1. Right? Through our Lord Jesus Christ, all of this stuff. So I'm not going to go into the logic. I think you can follow the logic. The point is that God did this even though we didn't deserve it. Right? So, and if he brought us this far, he surely is going to take us farther. If while we were sinners, he died for us, now that we are his friends, how much more will he finish the job and come back a second time? Do you understand again how this kind of answers the question of the staleness of 57 AD? Well, he came once. Is he going to come again? Well, I don't know. You were his enemy and he died for you. Now that you're his friend, he's going to give up on you? Or do you think he'll come back a second time? I think he's going to come back a second time. So, you start to see the much more here in verses 9 and verse 10. And that was the question of number 4. How many times do you see the phrase much more or something very similar? So, I see it there at least in 5:9. I see it in 5:10. Some people actually saw it in 5:11. Do you see it in 5:11 there? With the phrase, not only this, but we also rejoice, kind of much more. Where's the next verse where you see much more? Yeah, let's just scoot over here really quickly to where? Yep, 5:15, you see much more again. And 5:17. And have I missed anything? There's actually one more. Where's the other one? Yep, very good. A lot of you found it there. 5:20. Grace multiplied all the more. Okay. So really, we get this perfect relationship, functioning relationship with God. How do we do that? Because Jesus did so much more than what Adam undid. Seth?
There's actually another one back in verse 3.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Somebody else said that too. When you say not only this, but we also rejoice? Okay. Yeah. Not as explicit, but yeah, it's kind of the theme of the whole chapter. Right? So let's keep going into this really interesting passage. Now, this might seem really strange to you, so we're going to look at it. The explanation, how peace is possible, because Christ's solution is greater than Adam's failure. And we're going to start here with verse 12. So then, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men. Now, the problem with that is he never really says how. Right? And then that causes theologians all sorts of heartache, and then to go all sorts of theological theories, otherwise known as a construct, because it's an answer which we have constructed, sometimes out of real thin air. But they've constructed, and two of the typical answers are seminal and federal headship. So did you use the Google? Did you guys do it as he asked you to? What's seminal headship and what's federal headship? Or did anybody talk about this in a theology class? Oh, did you really? Which one? Theology 1? 1. Who was your professor? Dr. Kimball. Okay. Anybody else talk about it who didn't have Dr. Kimball? Peterson. Oh, Peterson. Okay. Man, you're an old person. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Who did? Oh, okay. All right, cool. So, what is seminal headship versus federal headship? Can you explain it in your own words?
Seminal headship was like that we were like present in Adam.
The which one?
Seminal.
Seminal headship, uh-huh.
Federal headship was like he sinned on behalf of all of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He sinned on behalf of us. Yeah, something like this. Let me give you kind of a definition. I think I've got the definition here, right? What we all agree on is that Adam's sin caused all of us to be sinful. Everybody can agree on that part. But we're not quite sure about how that happened, right? Exactly how that sinfulness was transmitted, that's the question. And so federal headship says Adam was our representative, right? This is the word, this is where federal comes from, like our federal representative government. So his vote, as it were, was cast, and we reap the consequences. So God treats us as sinners, legally imputes to us sinfulness on this basis. Now, as I said to you in the notes, I'm not going to spend more than 3.5 minutes on this because it's just not that important. But I want you to be aware of it. I want you to have seen it. Okay. The seminal headship, this is appealing to many because it makes a nice alternative parallel to God imputing or declaring us righteous because of what Jesus has done for us. Okay. So Adam acts badly, and so God imputes his sinfulness to us. Jesus acts well, and so God imputes his righteousness to us. It's kind of a nice parallel there in the eyes of many people. Seminal headship is this, that Adam's choice changed his nature to sinful, and he reproduced children in his sinful image. In this one, God doesn't merely treat me as a sinner or impute sinfulness to me. I actually am a sinner because I was born with a sinful nature. Now, is that what you all read about? Is that what you all found? Okay. So there it is. I will give you a hint as to which one I think is a slightly better alternative as we get later on in the passage. But those are the basic ideas here. So did your professors encourage you to vote for one way or the other? Really? What did they tell you to vote for? Federal? Anybody else? Anybody? Mrs. Ty, do you remember? Don't remember? Okay. Cool. Let's go on. That's 3.5 minutes is up. Now, let's get to this next question. Notice that the Net Bible has an M dash. Ben, this is just your day to learn about typographical abbreviations and stuff. Do you know what an M dash is? No. Well, it's that right there. See that little thing right there? Right? It's an M dash, and it's a dash that's not the regular dash, but it's the width of an M. Okay? And what it means, it's the only kind of dash you should actually use unless you're talking about between numbers. And it's the only kind of a dash you should actually use in writing, because what it means is kind of like a colon or that is. And so what it's trying to say is namely, okay? So when he says death spread to all men because all sinned, and what that means is 13 and 14 is an explanation of what 12 is. Very similar to a colon. In fact, I can't tell you exactly the difference between that and a colon, but like a colon. If you put a colon, you would mean like, okay, here's the explanation to it. Okay? So 13 and 14, according to the Bible, I think they're right, is an explanation to death spread to all men because all sinned. So this indicates that 13 and 14 are an explanatory rabbit trail that attempt to explain how Paul can say all sinned. Do you understand why Paul's readers might need this explanation of why all sinned? That is, why might the audience think that the intervening people from Seth to Moses would not have sinned? Did anybody here understand the question, let alone get the answer right? Ryan, you think you got it?
They would have probably thought that sinning is breaking the law, and of course, if the law wasn't given yet, the people wouldn't have sinned.
Yeah, that is really, really close to being totally accurate. Yeah, that's really, really close. So let me follow up the question then and say this. If sin is knowingly breaking God's law, which is kind of the accepted definition of their sin, knowingly breaking God's law, and the people from Seth to Moses didn't have the law, then why worry about the people from Seth to Moses? Or what about Adam? In what way did Adam sin? Because he didn't have the law. God explicitly gave him a command like his law, which he broke. Yeah, exactly. You with me here? So let me put the story up here. We might hope that 13 to 14 would explain how death spread to all people, but it doesn't necessarily. And what's important to Paul in 13 to 14 explains the phrase all sin, thus the M dash, okay? To the Jewish mind, they would wonder, how could all these pre-law people have broken the commandments since they didn't have them? Paul's answer is, well, they may not have all sinned in the knowing, conscious, deliberate way that Adam did, but they sure were sinners, as demonstrated by the undeniable fact that they all died. Okay? Sin is not taken into account when there is no law. What he means by that is you're not as guilty when you sin in ignorance, but you're still guilty enough. Now, that's the written explanation. You can get to it on the S drive. Let me picture it for you, okay? This is much easier to picture it like this, I think. So let's go back to our holiness measure here, and we're just going to try to explain verses 13 and 14. Adam, when he sins, goes where in the chart? He goes all the way over to consciously sinful, doesn't he? Because he deliberately disobeyed the commandment, don't eat the tree. Now, and that's the same way people after Moses disobey by breaking a deliberate commandment. But the people from Seth to Moses, where are they going to go? They're just going to go to sinful, and yet death reigns over everybody, right? So Paul's point is, this sin right here, people from Seth to Moses, is not nearly as bad as this sin, which is, to use his words in chapter 7, sinfully sinful. Okay? You'll see what I mean when we get there. Adam does this. The people after Moses do that. The people from Seth to Moses are sitting in here, but they're still sinners because death is sitting on top of them and they all die. Okay? Or, same chart in a slightly different way. This way. Now, this is the timeline, okay? We're putting them out there according to the timeline. We got Adam and then Seth and then Moses. So we're going to say, don't eat the tree. He violated it. He was consciously sinful. The people from Seth to Moses don't have very much revelation. They are unconsciously sinful. And the people from after Moses, they are consciously sinful again. So if we put our kind of accountability level up here, can you tell me how accountable each group is? Well, I'm going to draw the line something like back up like that. These people right here are not as sinful, but they're still sinful enough to die because death reigned over them, just like everybody else. Okay? And that's his basic point, I think, in verses 13 and 14. So, then let's do this. In 5:15 to 17, is Paul trying to compare how Adam and Jesus are alike or how they are not alike in what they have done? Anybody brave and want to answer this one? Yeah. Okay. I'll take that. And notice also this. Notice that several times he actually uses these words, not like, right? In verse 16, not like, right? So in some ways he's comparing them, but I think in a lot of ways he's trying to say that they're not really alike because even though there was one sin back there, Jesus' death took care of many sins, right? So to put the picture up here, it's like Christ overflowed to many. Now, one sin caused it, but many sins are cured. Right? This is one of the ways he says they're not alike. One sin started, but he cures many sins. Much better. Right? Death reigned over. Now life is going to reign over. This results in condemnation. This results in justification. But the big idea of this is that Jesus does much more than what Adam did. And that's all I want to say about that, I think. And part of what I'm trying to get at is to argue against that federal headship idea. So now, Carrie, you know where I stand on this thing. And part of the reason I say that is because notice the statement, notice the word in verse 19. Just as through the disobedience of the one man, the many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of one man many will be made righteous. Does that sound like the federal headship or the seminal thing? It sounds like the seminal to me because it's not God treating us as this way. It's actually you're made, right? So because Adam and Eve sinned and changed their nature, they had kids who were made sinners because they were born in their image. Right? Now, notice here, the obedience of the one man, many be made righteous. Does that mean that you're made righteous now or treated righteous now? If you can answer this, I'll let you go. Look at the phraseology. Does God make you righteous right now, or does he treat you righteous right now? Is OJ made righteous, or is he treated righteous? What? Ryan, did you answer? It says made, though. But I know I'm not made righteous right now. Will be made, absolutely. See the verb tense? Right? In the past tense, they were made sinners, but here's the hope of the glory. Right? He gets back to that future thing. For one man, many will be made righteous, and someday he's going to make me righteous even after I've been justified now. He treats me righteous now, but one day he's actually going to really make me that way, totally. Okay? So that's why I kind of lean towards the seminal thing here. I think it makes sense with the grammar and the way he's talking. The law came in so the transgression may increase, but where sin increased, grace multiplied all the more. We'll see more and more about that again. And of course, we finish with all this happens again through Jesus Christ our Lord. Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't ever forget.